sometimes struggle to get up in the morning or wind down for bed at night? I used to find it so difficult. I woke up with no sense of positivity and brightness. I was void of motivation and spirit. This changed completely when I started waking up with a Lumi body clock. These incredible devices mimic the light and colour of a real sunrise and sunset, transforming the experience of waking up and going to sleep completely. Rather than being suddenly woken up with an alarm clock, the Lumi body clock will wake you up gradually with a natural sunrise. The Lumi body clock has been shown to improve the quality of sleep and awakening and to boost mood and productivity in clinical trials. You can personalise your sunrise and sunset from 15 to 90 minutes with their clinically tested unique natural light and more than 20 sleep and wake sounds. We all deserve to sleep well and to wake up feeling fresh. So if you're finding this a challenge and you want to try a new approach, go to lumi.com. We are primarily audio, but we are video as well.
Okay, well, because I have a large bogey in my nose, which I'm dying to pull out and exhibit and maybe even have a quick nibble on, which is fine for your listeners, but I doubt if your viewers would want to see that.
Well, I don't know. I'm sure that there are some ardent fans of yours who'd be fascinated even with that type of...
Oh, all my fans love that shit.
Well, yeah, I mean, picking your nose is allowed, but it will be captured on video recording if you decide to do that. But yeah, I wanted to start off by asking you, what is the earliest thing that you can recall drawing you to music in the first place?
I think it would be an orchestral piece by Carl Orff called Carmina Burana, which your viewers or listeners will, the minute you hear the opening, you've heard it in a million commercials, starting football games. It's one of those, it's like a one-hit wonder in the classical orchestral world, you know, Carmina Burana. Anyhow, when I was 7, it fried my brain.
And did that light the fire of, you know, wanting to play music or wanting to pursue music for the rest of your life? Or was that just, you know, whoa, that is a pretty incredible piece of music and made you just want to listen more?
I'm not sure when the threshold was. Like, I've never actually given it thought between receiving music. You know, when I was a kid, I remember turning the lights off and just listening and experiencing it visually in my head as paisley patterns and weird intersecting colors. And there was kind of a visual aspect with my eyes closed, just listening to this soundscape, this musicscape. When the transition came of absorbing it and creating it in my own head, I don't know. But from as long as I can remember, there has been a torrent of my own music surging through my brain. And that's why I'm a composer, because I got this stuff coming out. Now, that doesn't mean it's any good to other people. It's very subjective, but it sure works for me, and there's a lot of it.
Yeah, well, I think your musical output works for a number of people. That is for sure. When for those people who don't know, and obviously, you know, you are a composer as well as alongside being a drummer. For some people listening, and definitely for some mates of mine, you are who some people regard as the best rock drummer or best drummer in pop music history.
I certainly would. I concur with that opinion.
Well, I'm glad to see you keep your feet on the ground, Stuart.
Yes.
So a lot of people think that, but when did you actually start playing the drums? Because many people might think that it might, you know, would have been from sort of age 3 years old or something.
No. I think more like 10-ish, 10, 11, 12 kind of thing. I know that I played in my first band at like 12. It was because my brother Ian, who was the coolest kid in Beirut, they wanted him in the band because the drummer went back. It was the American Community School in Beirut, and all these American kids in the Middle East. And the drummer, his dad got posted back in America. And so they wanted Ian to be the drummer. And there was a drum set that the guy had left behind. Unfortunately, being the Fonz at ACS wasn't enough to hold the beat. And so he had these drums there. And whenever he would roar off on his motorcycle, I would sneak into his room on pain of death and whack away at the drums there. And a weird thing that was very confusing for a little baby me, because my older brother was the coolest, best at everything. And I would hear him struggling over trying to play that rhythm. And I'm outside the door listening. As soon as he roars off, I get on there and I can do it. Wait a minute. That's not right. That I can do something that my big brother, the hero, can't do. I must be doing it wrong. And so began a journey with music.
And
oh, by the way, Ian pretty soon realized that that was not for him. And he said, okay, but my kid brother's pretty good. And so he got me into the band. Thereby, he was 14, I was 12, but he was already my agent and remained my agent for the next 50 years.
Oh, yeah, because he was your agent throughout, throughout the
police. For the police, for Curved Air, for everything. He was the agent.
That's amazing.
And Brother Miles was the manager. Not just of me, but of half of the new wave.
Yeah. Well, were you pleased, despite their huge role in your career and in other people's career? Are you pleased that you were the musical one who got to be on stage?
Yes. I got the fancy, I got the bright lights, I got all the attention. I was the baby of the family, so I was quite used to that. But also the baby of the family meant that I'm very much a team player. I'm most happy in a band with my chuckle buddies around me, the gang. That's my happy place.
Mm. And so, like, some of the way that you play drums, like some great rock drummers, you can kind of hear what they do and think, okay, I can do that too, and all the rest of it. Sometimes with your playing, it does feel like to the layman, it's like, shit, like that must require a lot of effort, and you get the sort of impression, I don't know whether it's misguided, that you'd have to do 5 hours of paradiddles and rudiments every day to sort of get your
no. And it always amazes me when people say that, because I'm very instinctive. I don't think out anything and rehearse it before, and it just blats out there, much to the discomfort sometimes of my bandmates who never know what's going to happen next. Not what happened last night and not what's going to happen tomorrow night. What the hell's Stewart doing now has been the story of my life. And so when people say it sounds like, that's how the hell did you play that? I don't know. It just came out. Composing, the composer dude and the drummer guy are two very different entities, using different parts of the brain. While the composer dude is thoughtful, sensitive, very good at give and take in conversations. The drummer guy's an asshole. He just bangs shit. He doesn't know what's going on. He just bangs shit. I hear a bass line, I pick up on it, I'm grooving on it, and that's it. Get over it. Hope you like it. Very different, I don't even know if you'd even call it a mindset. It's an instinctive thing. So whether or not it's difficult to play or easy to play is beyond my ken. I do know that when I was the serious, sensitive composer dude composes rhythm parts, sometimes the percussionists do look a little cross-eyed, and not because it takes 10 hours to practice some kind of flammecue technique, but because they're kind of syncopated in a strange place. I put 3s against 4 all the time, and then I put 3s against 4s delayed by an 8th note, which just sounds so easy breezy to me. But when you put it on the page, there are a lot of tied notes and weird rests and stuff. It looks like hell on the page, but really it's pop, 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 pop. It sounds real easy, but in fact on the page, and so I see the orchestra, they're da, 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 and they're navigating from left to right across the page, all this ink, where really, come on guys, bum, 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 real easy peasy. That's why I like youth orchestras. They get much more rehearsal than the professional guys. And the professional guys get one rehearsal, they read it, they play it, that's it, you're done. That's what's the cool thing about orchestras. But sometimes they don't get those rhythmic figures right away. the youth orchestras, they don't need all fancy technique to play 30-second. They don't need any of that to play my music. They just got to understand syncopation. Give them one extra rehearsal or two. They get it. Oh, now I get what's going on. And they can play it real easy. You know, the reggae upchick is so simple if you know what it is. But if you've never seen it before, you're reading it and they go, wait a minute, why am I not playing the downbeat? And so when you question the ease of my figures on the drums, from this side, looks like cake.
With reading music, are you of the opinion that all good musicians should be able to read?
Not at all. Not at all. There are two kinds of musicians in this world, I decree. There are musicians of the ear and musicians of the eye. And by the way, I've decreed this a lot. This is a standard lecture. So are you sitting comfortably? Musicians of the ear, that's you know, your rock and roll guys. They're staring off into space. Their ear connects them to the music. They just know when 8 bars are up, we're probably going to go to A, you know, in 8 bars, or stay on D or whatever, you know. And they connect with their ear in very simple terms. And when they play along with music, they're to a large extent improvising. The actual inflections of the groove that they're playing, the little addition things, the little finger wiggle, little hammer-ons and stuff. A rock guitarist and a drummer, and you know, they get the general idea. Okay, it's A, D, 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 A, E, E, you know, whatever. And that's all they need to know. And they will make up the rest. Musicians of the eye are a very different sort. They connect with the music through a visual connection to notes on a page. They are readers. And they don't know when the 8 bars are up. Their eyes navigate from left to right across the page, and everything that their fingers do derives from what their eyes tell them to do. Now, this is really great when they're playing Mozart or Wagner or very complex music. They don't make anything up. They look, in their religion, their ethos is to obey the page. And if there's a hairpin there, they'll put a hairpin there. And if these notes are articulated, you know, they're slurred, they'll go da da da. It's not da 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 da. Okay, that's slur staccato. You know, these ways of articulating, describing how they shall play the melody is what they live for. You don't tell that to a guitarist. You just sing him an approximation of the tune, sing it to him, and he'll play his version of it because he's the greatest guitarist on earth, and you're only working with him because of that. So you expect him to come up with his own spin on it. Not so the orcs. The orchestral musicians do as they see on the page, and they're incredibly good at it, which is why they're very much beloved to me. I can write it and I can decide where they swell, where they lean forward, where they lean back, not just what they play, but how they play it. I love that shit. Even though as a musician, as a drummer, good luck telling me what to do.
When did you learn to read music?
I learned very early on. My sister taught me basic piano lessons when I was, I don't know, 8 or 9. My first instrument was a trombone. And so I learned the staff and the notes on it, just as, you know, way too early in life to do anything about it. And I always knew I was a musician. When I got to in boarding school, I was in the school band, and there was written music there. And then when I went to college, I majored in music and studied harmony and so on. And so and then I became an actual musician. Never saw another sheet of paper for 20 years. Actually, no, let's say when I got out of college, 1972-ish, formed the Police, 1970, end of 76, 77, went all the way through that. Never saw a sheet of music until around about 1983 or whatever. I did Rumblefish, which is my first film score. And I was just making it up, doing what I do, recording all the instruments myself, pulling in players, until one day the director, Francis Ford Coppola, turns around and he says, you know what? This is great. We need strings. Okay. So I call up the contractor, who's the guy you call. I need a saxophone player. He's got a Rolodex with 6 saxophone players. You want the blues guy or the jazz guy? Okay, I call up the contractor. And strings, I need string. Okay, cool. How many? I don't know, strings, more than one string section. And so he books me, I think maybe 14 guys, first, second, viola and cello. And they come on down. And usually when you book a session with a guitarist, he shows up with his 3 Stratocasters, 2 Les Pauls, some guitar you never heard of, and a bunch of pedals and cartage. And you spend a glorious afternoon just sort of, I need hearing when she looks over, give me kind of a schwang and kind of a minory sort of, and you work it out, and you call the right guy, and he will give you of himself. Okay, so these string players arrive, the string section, and hi guys, how y'all doing? Yeah. So we're doing this movie, and it's about this, and it's about that. And then when the scene where she looks over at him, I need to feel kind of a little twang of love, but suspicion, and they're looking less, instead of more and more enthusiastic, which a guitarist would, they're looking less enthusiastic. They're looking positively anxious. And finally, one of them puts his hand up. The leader puts his hand up. Maestro, do you want us to play what you got on the page here, or whatever the fuck you're talking about? And what was on the page was a lot of footballs, a lot of whole notes, because I didn't know how to write diddly diddly diddly. I just wrote, he wants strings, so I had like whole notes, chords, just swaying nicely, and that's strings, sir, as ordered. And I said, okay, play the page. And a couple things. First of all, they were done in 20 minutes. It didn't take all afternoon, as it would have with a guitarist, as we're negotiating, inspiring each other. Instead, it took 20 minutes. They just read it right off the page. Bang, 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 sway, swish, swash. That was the first thing. Cool. That's efficient. Second of all, wow, that's really pretty. Wow, that's just really pretty, the way those strings, wow, man. And so began 20 years before the mast as a hired gun film composer, where I had an education in orchestration forced upon me. And I don't regret it. I mean, I've got paid for my entire education, but I love working with orchestra, and there's more to it than footballs. Now I do know how to write diddly, 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 and whether I should give it to the bassoon or the oboe. And it's a fantastic medium for creating cool shit.
Yeah, that is the way that I had come to think of it, having spoken to a lot of people on this podcast, that it is more or less, condense it down to, if you're in the classical world, orchestras, as you're describing your career in film and TV scoring, you need to read, or it would, it's very, very beneficial to read, and it saves a lot.
It's just very efficient.
And then in rock and roll and in pop, it's really not necessary, and it's not what you're doing, because you're not on stage sort of reading sheet music. I mean,
well, you're not hired. You're not in the band because you're able to reproduce what some composer somewhere wrote. You're in the band because you got a great instincts yourself, and you are somewhat, in some regards, a composer. You're improvising. You're creating that cool guitar part. The guitarist came up with that. Somebody else wrote the chords, wrote the chords of the song and the lyric, but the guitarist came up with the chops, and the drummer came up with the beat, and that's the way it works in a rock band. Of course, only one of the band owns the copyright, but the other guys put their thing on it. And when it comes to rock and roll, the guys, the guitarists who can read are not the great guitarists of the world. How do you get Jeff Beck to turn back down? Put a sheet of music in front of him.
Yeah, because it's not what you're like. Would you advise people who want to be in rock bands or pop bands to learn to read?
Yes,
you would advise them to. Why?
Yeah, that's not your primary motive, and you can have a great career without reading. But being able to read music is like being able to read words in the English language. I mean, it's a skill that is invaluable. It just cuts corners. You can write it down, or if you can read it, that just takes hours of experimentation and trial and error out of the equation. It's not why you're a musician. It's not the fundamentals of your musicianship, but it's just a very handy skill.
And what is the best way of learning to read, though? Is it
by doing it?
By just doing it again and again?
Yes, there are apps that can teach you the note values, how to work with them, and sort of, training, so that it's like when you learn arithmetic, the first thing they do when you're in elementary school is math facts. You just do your times tables over and over and over, and your additions. You just know that 3 + 4 is 8. It just is. You know that. Yeah. Almost got you there. It's the same with music facts. You just learn that the first space is F, and then, FACE, and then every good boy deserves fudge. And you just learn all these mnemonic, so that you just know. You don't have to work it out anymore. Just like with math facts, you just know. 3 × 2 is whatever you'd like it to be. So yes, the mechanics of learning are not hard. It's much easier to learn than Italian or Spanish, for instance. The vocabulary is much smaller. There are fewer words to learn, and it's damn useful. But the other thing is to use it or lose it. If you are looking at music and using your skills that you can, with an app, you can train yourself. They're fun. It's fun to do, like doing crossword puzzles on your phone. There's apps that will teach you ear training, so that you can identify intervals, what's that interview? All this stuff. And they're fun to do. They're fun to do while waiting for the kettle to boil or waiting for your train. But using these skills is key. And for that, I would recommend getting scores. If you're strictly into pop music, then get Beatles charts and see what the notes are, and use those skills. Put them to use. That makes them stick. If you use them, they stick. They didn't stick for me because I used it in college up until a point, and then I never saw charts again. Almost had to begin from scratch reading again. And I'm not a sight reader by any means, but I know what I'm looking at on the page. And so use it would be the main way to advance. And studying scores, either Stravinsky scores, which is really a lot of fun to read as you listen. It really enhances the whole appreciation of the art of it. The emotion of it is enhanced actually by feeding your eyes, also feeding into what the music is.
But in terms of the, you're saying use it or lose it. If you're looking to play gigs and you're looking to play rock music or pop music or things that are more improvisational in nature.
No, I'm talking about a hobby here. If you're a musician looking to play gigs and in a pop band, learn your chords, get real good on your instrument. And if you're a guitarist, get a girlfriend to look after your life. But I'm just talking about this music stuff is kind of a side game, a hobby, which is tangential to what you're really there for, but quite good, useful skill to have alongside your guitar chops.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it can only be a good thing. But it's just how long would you say that it took you to get back into reading music? And do you use apps when you did that? Because this would have probably been before.
No. Apps are more recent. When the iPhone I found my first ear training app. Wow, cool. And all these other ones that are just, because I spend my days nowadays looking at music on the page, and the faster my eyes can assimilate it, my brain cognition gears, the faster they all work, the quicker I can get through my mission of the day. It used to be that it takes me, because with applications and MIDI and composition tools on a computer, I wrote my first opera because I didn't need to know the names of the notes. I just need to go dink, 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 and the MIDI played it back for me. The machine plays it back. I don't need to know if it's a F sharp minor chord. It sounds like this. I don't need to name it. But so I was writing music long before I was looking at the page. And it used to take me forever. At one point I made the transition from writing the music, having others orchestrate it. Then I'd show up at the orchestra date and I'd look at the page that somebody else had taken what I wrote and orchestrate, put it on the page and divide it amongst the different horns and bassoons and strings and stuff. And I'm looking at it and I think, wait a minute, it doesn't sound like John Williams. Well, why not? Well, because John Williams would have a swell there. Okay, how do you get that? It's called a hairpin. You have it gets louder here, it swells louder here, it swells quieter there. All this language. I used to be very slow at looking at the page. Then I started doing it my goddamn self. Writing would take 5 minutes. orchestrating would take 5 days. But I'm catching up.
And these days, how often do you play drums and kind of get back into that other side of what you do? You know, how do you split your year and your time between playing drums and you know, using your instrumental skills, and then doing composing and that kind of more classical side to what you do?
It depends on what the mission is. Right now, I'm all drums. I'm learning my Police Deranged for Orchestra charts, where I just completely screwed up the Police tunes. I chopped them up, did my own mosh up of them, and orchestrated the above. And now I'm learning what the hell I did. And I'm learning those parts because I've got a gig coming up with the San Diego Symphony and another one, the Cleveland Orchestra. And, you know, I've got shows of this coming up. So now I'm into drums. Last week, I was in preparation for Oysterhead, which is a 3-piece jam band. And we played a big festival, and we just go out there for 2 hours and just make it all up. It's the opposite. We just make it up. It's 3 guys. We have kind of some basic structure of some songs, but it's mainly we go off into these wild, long jams. And that's a whole different world. I had to get ready for that. It took me a couple of weeks on the elliptical just to get the physical core strength up. But before that, I was in Germany with the Deutsche National Theater, the German National Opera, the #1 opera company of the nation, doing an opera that I wrote for them about Nikola Tesla called The Electric Saint. And I'm there. There's nobody improvising anything. It's all on the page. And it's this very pucka opera company working with sopranos and tenors and the conductor with the orchestra in the pit. And it's all very much on the page. It's a very different world. Getting on a plane back from Germany the next day, firing up Oyster and blasting drums, these different aspects of music refresh each other.
Wow. Yeah, those are some really, really different projects. You are somebody who clearly stays incredibly inspired. Who are the people, like what music have you heard and feel?
By the way, one more to throw in there, and as a plug, is another. While I was doing all that, I also was making an album with an Indian musician called Ricky Kedge, where he has assembled all these unbelievable classical musicians in Bangalore in India. And he sent me some of these tracks. And so I've been adding percussion, suggesting, carving it up and working with him. Wow. And his album is just coming out with a single called Himalayas. And you can find it on YouTube or Spotify.
Oh, awesome.
Okay, that's the plug.
Yeah.
Did you have a question?
No, I did. Well, I'm looking forward to checking that out. But I was going to ask, between all of these projects, do you have time to check new things out? And is there anything that inspires you? Because you obviously stay incredibly inspired in lots of different kind of genres and areas.
Well, I've entered the winter of my life when my teenagers no longer keep me hip. My last teenager has gone off to college. So the last thing I heard about the world out there was Kendrick Lamar. So I'm up to date as far as Kendrick Lamar, and then I know nothing because she's gone off to college and I'm not dropping her off at school every morning, driving her to school with all the kids. I've got 7 kids. And so that's kept me abreast of the times as my teenagers keeping me hip. Now I am off the edge. I am adrift, cut loose. I have no fucking idea what the zeitgeist is out there, what the children are listening to. And by the way,
you don't care.
I'm not that bothered.
Yeah.
Actually, I am because kids are fun to play to. It's fun to make music for kids. I'm a little long in the tooth for that gig, but still it's interesting. And what I liked about my last teenager, Celeste, who got off to college now, Kendrick Lamar, was of all of them, finally somebody reinvented the wheel. No backbeat, no E, A, and D chords, no guitar, no drum set. None of these features that have dominated popular music for a century. Guitar, bass, and drums.
Yeah, well, the Kendrick stuff was quite, very kind of, there was lots of jazzy stuff there, and Robert Glasper, I think. Well,
it sounds like a soundtrack for a really fucked up movie.
Yeah.
And there's my teenage daughter and all of her friends singing the words and dancing around. But this is not teenage singing and dancing around music. this is really serious stuff.
Yeah, yeah, it was. But it was amazing to make such serious music, such different music, and not with like cheesy, satisfying chords or anything. And then,
And achieve commercial success with this
yeah,
weird stuff.
yeah, it was quite an astounding achievement. There's quite a lot of that. There's a bit of everything going on now. One thing I wanted to ask, considering what you're preparing for now, with kind of, you know, reworking, reimagining the Police songs, is, do you, like, to what extent do you consider those years in the Police to be like, how do you feel about those years in the Police at this particular stage in time? And are you conscious of, like, I mean, the Police, of all those bands, like all of the big bands of all time, like the Police get played alongside like my mates who listen to Kendrick or like Anderson .Paak or like the trendy stuff of the day. The band that everybody kind of like digs the musicianship of is you guys. It's the Police. Are you conscious of the fact that you've become kind of hit in that sense?
Well, I'm told that, and it's very gratifying. I'm very happy that it is so. It was never a very comfortable band.
Yeah.
In the early days when we were codependent, we got along. And when we were busting up and out, we felt the buzz of what we were achieving together. But when we got to the top and sat there for like 2 or 3 albums, you know, we were playing stadiums for the last 2 albums. The limitations of the band experience began to impose. It wasn't so much fun. And my memory of the Police was a very uncomfortable place, like a Prada suit made out of barbed wire. The music was fantastic. The excitement that we felt on stage was fantastic, but everything about the life was very anxious. I remember mostly being anxious in those years. Then it all went away and we all had nice careers. You know, I'd had my film composing stuff and Sting did his solo tour. You know, we all had lives and forgot all about it for about 20 or 30 years until we did a reunion tour. Then we really had forgotten about it. I had, you know, as a film composer, realized that to go into a meeting with a director at Universal or, you know, Disney, I don't necessarily need to be wearing snakeskin pants. I'm going in as a craftsman looking for a job. And by the way, I'm dropping my kids off at school and, you know, there's Spielberg dropping his kids off at the same school and he's in Gap. Why do I need to? One day I realized I don't need to be a rock star anymore. I got down to Gap and got me some comfy clothes. And by the way, in those days, tight black pants were fucking tight. None of this stretchy bullshit that the youngsters get away with today. That doesn't take commitment. Tight black pants today, ha! Anyone can strap on the tightest black pants because they're all stretchy. When I was a rock star, it took commitment to wear those tight black pants and have 7 children.
Yeah, it must have been. Well, I mean, they don't make rock stars like they used to these days, Stuart.
I tell you one thing that has come to me in later years is an appreciation for both Andy and Sting. Doing these derangements, basically, I went into the old tapes. I got the master tracks on, you know, the multi-tracks on Pro Tools, and I can go in there and I can find the other guitar solo and I can find other Sting experimentations and I can find other versions of the songs. And I found all these really cool figures, which I've orchestrated and turned into derangements, which will be playing in an orchestra near you. Doing that, I really discovered that Andy was really damn clever. He had some really cool shit. But I mean, there's a world of that. But those songs that old Stingo came up with, you know, we've had our differences, but man, he wrote some songs, and when you get into them and analyze them and work with them, you realize the artistry of it. And just instinctively, I don't know where it comes, he just instinctively, he built these incredible songs. So my appreciation for my 2 erstwhile colleagues has very much grown working with this material. Wow. I'm more appreciative of them now than I ever was working with those 2 assholes.
Was it the case that... because I can't remember whether it was whether I read something or documentary, but whatever, that it was sort of like whenever you get on stage together, it's like magic.
then whenever you get off stage, then you guys are kind of immediately starting an argument. Is that the sort of
No, actually, it's the other way around. It's absolutely the other way around.
Oh, right.
We get along great off stage. At dinner at Sting's Palazzo, we get along really well. We're not birds of a feather. You know, Stingo is quiet and deep, and I'm noisy and shallow. So we, you know, if I'm having a party, he'll kill it. If he's having a quiet moment, I will kill it. So we're not birds of a feather, but we love and adore and respect each other and appreciate what we have each brought into each other's lives.
So it's actually on stage that
it's on stage where the problems are, because I'm playing too fast and I'm playing a drum fill right when he's got his beautiful, poignant lyric that he wants to sing. Fuck off! I'm hitting a drum now. And like I said, I'm not necessarily in full cognition, in full control of what I'm doing, because it's an instinctive thing. That's sort of why they pay me the big bucks, is that attitude, I think. And so we do musically rub each other up seriously the wrong way, because music has a different function in our lives. For some, it might be an escape from the cold, harsh, brutal world into a beautiful, pristine, beautiful place that is all about an aesthetic appreciation that just makes you feel good. For me, it's a celebration. It's an explosion. It's let's burn the building down. It's like a Ramalama. Let's go for it. Very different intention. And so the result that derives from that is not necessarily perfect to the other party. Musically, we're at each other's throats, but socially, we appreciate each other.
That's really interesting.
And by the way, that tension was when we were young and hungry and codependent, kind of made it work. But now that we are old and comfortable and don't need to put up with that shit anymore, let's just pour another glass of wine and have some fun tonight. Where's Trudy?
Yeah, well, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, and I get it's the right way around, isn't it? If for you know, for the story to be happily ever after, that is the right way round. Because
well, I mean, we would for our reunion tour, we would rehearse and be shouting and screaming and temper tantrums and storming out of the room, all your usual spinal tap stuff, and then dinner bell goes and we go down and okay, we were rehearsing in Tuscany at the 4,000 acre palazzo, and dinner's a pretty cheerful affair, and we have a great time until the next day at 10 o'clock.
Wow, yeah, shit. I did not realize that it was that way around, but I mean I would have, but yeah, I reversed it the wrong way around. In terms of the Police's music, I mean, this is not one of those occasions where I'm going to have like lots of listeners not familiar with it. So therefore, I wanted to ask you, how many different genres? Because you were much younger when you
7
records. 7. Okay. Well, how much did you guys consciously make the music so kind of full of space? I know that you.
Well, Andy had a saying, "Less is more."
Yeah. And
we kind of went along with it. Sure, less is more. While we did more. At first, it was very much on paper. The original Police schematic was on paper. I wrote a manifesto, which I still got. It's rather fun, actually. And we were determined to be a punk band. No song should be longer than 2 minutes. No love songs permitted. No guitar solos, ramalama, nothing under 140 beats per minute. And it was very formulaic, and we got precisely nowhere until one of the guys in the band started writing actual songs, you know, hit songs that were so cool and fun to play that I had to come up with a new manifesto, which instead of was, "We will eat your children, come dance with us." And that's when we began to get somewhere.
That's interesting. And in terms of the way that you put the records together, like compared to a lot of the music that was popular at that time, particularly in the 80s, were you consciously going against the grain, doing things like, you know, having that different snare sound and just it felt like you.
No. It was pretty instinctive. I guess you could. One thing that we were conscious of was the minute somebody said, "Wow, this spare sign," we thought, "Yeah, that is cool. Yeah, okay, let's keep it spare." And occasionally, feedback would affect our process, but mainly we felt there's kind of a snobbish reluctance to get down into the nitty gritty of stylistic, application of stylistic constraints, because we'd come from that place, where we tried to be something and, well, that didn't work. So let's just make it up as we go along. And that worked out a lot better for us.
Yeah.
But we are, it was the same with our dress code. Miraculously, we'd all come down from our hotel rooms, meet up at the lobby call, and we all kind of match. The number of times we'd come down wearing the same T-shirt, the same, XTC T-shirt was synchronicity. In fact, Sting wrote a whole album about it. But we wouldn't be caught dead saying, well, I think we should have more of a this look or a that look. And how about if we, Andy, you wear this and Sting wear, we wouldn't have been caught dead with any of that styling stuff. Right. Cut to 30 years later, the reunion tour. And okay, we're a band now. And the stylists come, they take one look at me in my Gap suburban dad look, and they, oh dear. Oh. And so they got me down to Prada. My wife was overjoyed. They got me in skinny pants and, all a mode. And the funny thing was that one of the best films made recently was, at that time, was Zoolander. And I swear to God, the designers, the stylists, the police stylists for the reunion tour, they had me dressed up in derelict, purposely pre-ripped jeans. I couldn't fucking believe it. Are you guys insane? Didn't you see Zoolander taking the piss out of this whole thing of the fake used clothing that are brand new, and they each rip is another exorbitant addition to the cost of the thing. I could not believe it. That was life imitating art.
Well, you mentioned
in the wrong way.
You've mentioned Gap a couple of times. Gap is becoming very, very fashionable, very Zoolander, because I think they've appointed Kanye West as the creative director. So they'll be the
I was ahead of my time.
They'll be, yeah, you were ahead of your
Mom
time.
jeans.
The cool dad look is really in right now, Stuart. So
wow.
I hope you're very.
I'm in luck. At last, my ship's coming in.
Indeed. So I wanted to ask as my final question, like how do you manage to stay this inspired, and how often are you working? Because you've got so many different projects on the go, and I mean you've already achieved so much. So what gives you this kind of seemingly insatiable desire to keep working?
I don't know, new stuff. I do have friends in legacy bands that have been, really playing stadiums for 4 or 5 albums by now. Some good buddies of mine, and they're a bit stumped for their next record. And I'm telling you, God, you got to go into a different medium. Go into, write a musical. In fact, some of my buddies have done that, and it has very much refreshed them. I think change it up would be the main thing. I don't know the demographic of your listeners, but if you've had 20 years career in a successful career as a rock band, you're going to start making the same record over and over again. And that's going to go downhill. You got to listen to some Mozart. You got to go to Nigeria and, learn some Igbo dances. I hear they have great music in Bali. New input, I would say, is the most important refresher for any artist of any kind.
This episode is brought to you by Pact. Pact specialise in making travel easy for you with the beautifully designed Pact One. This innovative travel bag can be packed with as much as a suitcase, but it carries like a duffel bag. The Pact One is a bag that's been perfected with over 5 years of global travel testing spanning hundreds of thousands of miles. The Pact Coffee Kit provides you with everything you need to make barista quality coffee whilst on the move. It can be used anywhere you have water and electricity, so there will be no more poor quality coffee on your travels. Pact aren't only an amazing brand because of their products, which quite simply make your life better. They ensure fair working conditions for their factory employees and use eco-friendly materials and plastic-free packaging.
You can use the code GREATEST for 15% off the Pact One or the coffee kit. Simply head to pactbags.com and use the code upon checkout. Pact, revolutionising your travel experience.